Hi everyone, welcome to Fang's Fable. Please remember to like and subscribe. Let's start the story. To secure custody of my daughter during the divorce from my unfaithful husband, I left with nothing, giving up all material wealth. I thought I was doing the right thing, but as my daughter grew up, she saw the prosperity of her father's household while struggling through the hardships of building a new life with me from scratch. Resentment took root in her heart. If it weren't for you, I would have been living a good life with Dad and Auntie long ago. Why did you drag me into this suffering? Later, that very same man, her father, conspired with his mistress to take out a life insurance policy on me. Then they staged an accident and killed me. In the end, my husband and daughter used my insurance payout to live happily ever after with the mistress. I thought I would have passed on to the next world, but when I opened my eyes again, I was back to the day we were discussing the divorce. This time, as I faced my husband's smug expression and my daughter's evasive gaze, I smiled. You were the one in the wrong. Not a single cent of what I deserve will be left out. As for my daughter, a scheming and heartless daughter like this, she was no longer my concern. Right then, my husband, Hanson, impatiently shoved the divorce papers in front of me. The scene was painfully familiar. I turned my gaze toward my daughter. Jen lowered her head, avoiding my eyes. A cold sneer formed in my heart. So, just like me, she had also been reborn with memories of our past life. I took a deep breath and glanced at the divorce papers on the table. This time, I could sign, but I would set the terms. What terms? Hanson's tone was laced with irritation. Jen, standing beside him, nervously looked up at me before quickly lowering her head again. I took in the sight of the father and daughter duo, each with their own agenda. One by one, memories of my past life surged forward, those final moments of despair, the betrayal, the helplessness. I had lived again, and now I truly saw human nature for what it was. The daughter I had carried for 10 months, the child I had painstakingly raised. Just like her father, she valued money over kinships. Since we were divorcing, the assets would be divided fairly and clearly. Not a single cent of what was rightfully mine would be left behind. I spoke calmly. Hanson's face darkened. He slammed his palm onto the table. Selena, don't push your luck. Giving you $100,000 is already my kindness. What more do you want? If you don't agree, then we'll see each other in court. With those words, he stood up to leave. I had just reached the door when Jen ran after me, tugging at the corner of my sleeve. In a soft voice, she pleaded, Mom, $100,000 is a lot. I know you love me, but I think I want to live with Dad. She was panicking. She was afraid that I would fight for custody like in our past life, sacrificing everything for her. Watching her force out those tears, I pulled my sleeve from her grasp. $100,000? That's not enough. Jen clearly didn't understand what I meant. Mom, I want to be with you too, but I also want my mother to be happy. If being with Dad makes you happier, then I'll go with him. Her father's most outstanding trait, his silver tongue, had been perfectly inherited by my daughter. This was the child I had raised for over 10 years. If I hadn't known what she was really thinking, I would have thrown everything away just to hold her in my arms. But unfortunately, she didn't realize that following her father was going to be her greatest mistake of her short 10 years of life. I stroked her tiny head, smiling. All right, I respect your choice. In my previous life, I had feared that my daughter would suffer, so I insisted on taking her with me. Hanson knew she was my weakness. He used her custody as leverage to force me into giving up everything, leaving the marriage with nothing. For Jen, I was willing to sacrifice it all. And so, Hanson shamelessly took everything that should have been mine and married his mistress, Celia, living a carefree life. Celia Chu flaunted her luxurious vacations all over social media, making young Jen envious. Meanwhile, after leaving Hanson, my entire world revolved around Jen. To ensure she didn't feel the sting of poverty, I worked 3 jobs a day. But she had grown accustomed to a life of comfort and couldn't adjust. Seeing Celia Chu's extravagant lifestyle only made her resent me more. One day, I couldn't afford to buy imported cherries, and in a fit of anger, she ran straight to her dad to complain. Hanson, who hadn't seen her in a long time, showered her with gifts and took her out for a lavish meal. By the time she returned, She regretted choosing to live with me and despised our modest life. Even when I assured her that I would build a life even better than before, she only scoffed at my words. She had no patience to wait. Again and again, she told me, if it weren't for you, I wouldn't be living like this. But now in this new life, I wouldn't force her to suffer with me. Since she is so desperate to follow Hansen, I would grant her wish. I hired a lawyer to draft a new divorce agreement. It clearly outlined the division of assets. Since Hansen had betrayed me first, all our shared marital property would go to me. Every penny he spent during our marriage that could be reclaimed, and I would reclaim it all. Hansen's face darkened when he saw the document, his hand twitching as if he wanted to slap me. I calmly leaned forward. Oh, I forgot to include the fact that you were abusive. Go ahead, hit me a few more times. I'll just add it to the agreement. His raised hand trembled in the air before he angrily withdrew it. Fine, but then Jen stays with me. All right, she's yours, I retort calmly. He had miscalculated, fully expecting me to waver, but instead I agreed without hesitation. His expression twisted in disbelief. If you don't sign, we'll settle this in court, but I doubt you'll be able to keep that house and car of yours if it comes to that. He understood exactly what I meant. He still had 2 properties and a car hidden under his name. He thought that I would not know. But I had in fact known for quite a while. I told him, if we took this to court, he couldn't predict how it would end. I shrugged my shoulder nonchalantly. He was afraid of how a public lawsuit would affect his reputation. After weighing his options, he signed the agreement. You have 3 days to pack up and leave. I'm selling this house, I told him. I had no interest in staying in this place filled with betrayal. As I issued my ultimatum, Jen looked at Hansen in confusion. Dad, where are we going? Isn't this our home? She had never imagined that choosing her father would still result in her being forced out of the big house. Hurry up and pack your things. Your mother doesn't want you anymore, Hansen hollered at her. His tone was impatient. Jen still believed life with her father would be better than with me. To ensure that neither of them had the chance to regret it, I quickly sold the house and bought a small apartment. With the money from the sale, I would slowly build my fortune. This time, no one would stop me from making money. In my previous life, I had given up everything for my family. Jen had been born prematurely, and her health was frail. To take care of her, I had abandoned my career and dedicated myself to being a full-time mother. Years passed in the blink of an eye. In the beginning, Hansen and I had a clear division of responsibilities, and life was great and peaceful. But everything changed when he was laid off due to economic downturns. He decided to start his own business. I disagreed. I knew his capabilities. He was bound to fail. It would be a waste of time and money. But to preserve his fragile ego, I chose to support him from behind the scenes. The early days of his business were tough. He stayed up late every night. I felt sorry for him and wanted to help. I analyzed risks, offered advice, tried to guide him toward smarter decisions, but instead of appreciating it, he exploded. What does a housewife like you know? Talking is easy. If it were as simple as you think, anyone could start a business. He was furious, and that was the moment I finally realized he never saw me as his equal. This time, in this life, I would not be silent. This time, I would take back everything that was mine. Hansen panicked, because I had hit his sore spot, his fragile ego. But he forgot something. Before I became a housewife, my position was higher than his, my salary greater than his. He had also conveniently forgotten how he had begged me to quit my job in the first place. From that moment on, I stopped caring about his business. As expected, his venture failed, leaving him with a mountain of debt. He drowned his frustrations in alcohol, and when he was drunk, he took out all his resentment on me. At first, it was psychological manipulation, constant belittling and gaslighting, but soon it escalated to physical abuse. For the sake of our young daughter Jen, I endured it all. I didn't want her to grow up in a broken home like I did. But in the end, what did it matter? My love, my sacrifices, my protection, none of it meant anything to her. Then Hansen got lucky. A stroke of fortune allowed him to make some money. He became even more arrogant, convinced that he was some kind of genius entrepreneur. His attitude toward me grew colder. He stopped coming home, claiming he was too busy with work. And that was when Celia Chu entered the picture. In my past life, I had begged him. I swallowed my pride, endured his abuse, hoping he would at least give Jen a complete family. But it was useless. In the end, we still got divorced because Celia got pregnant. Hansen was desperate to get rid of me and our daughter so he could start a new life. But after my death in that past life, my soul lingered for a few days. That was how I found out the truth. The child in Celia Chu's belly wasn't even his. She had only wanted to marry him for his money. I refuse to believe that in this life, after knowing Hansen is now broke, she will still stay by his side. The thought alone made me smile. And sure enough, 3 days later, I received a call from her. "Selena, you're already divorced? Must you cause such a pain to our lives?" She questioned me with righteous indignation. I chuckled. "And who do you think you are to speak to me this way?" I had done my calculations. During my marriage, Hansen had spent over $50,000 on her, and that was only what I could trace. There was undoubtedly more that I didn't know about, but I decided to let that slide. "That money was voluntarily given to me by Hansen. What does it have to do with you?" she snapped. I wasn't in the mood to argue with a legal illiterate like her. "Suit yourself." I hung up. On the surface, I had demanded that she return the $50,000 to me. But in reality, the one who had to pay it back was Hansen. In the past, $50,000 might have been nothing to him. But things were different now. A month later, my divorce from Hansen was finalized. Jen's custody was officially his. The house I left for him was his parents' property, an old apartment over 100 square meters in a rundown community. Although it was spacious, the building was ancient, and there wasn't even an elevator on the 7th floor where they were going to live. As for the other property, it was just a warehouse. Wanting to provide a better home for his precious Celia Chu and their unborn child, Hansen had rented an apartment similar to our old one in a better neighborhood. I heard this from a real estate agent I knew. Honestly, I was a little surprised. With his current financial state, even affording the rent there wouldn't be easy. But I had bigger things to focus on. With memories of my past life, I knew that in 2 years, the government would seize an unfinished housing project nearby and turn the area into an economic development zone. Overnight, the real estate prices over that area would skyrocket. Right now, many homeowners of that unfinished housing project, unable to move in despite having property deeds, were desperate to sell. Some were willing to let go of their properties for dirt cheap. I took the money from selling my old home and purchased 3 apartments and a commercial storefront in that area. Originally, I had planned to buy an entire floor, but to stay low-key, I held back. With the remaining money, I deposited part of it into the bank and invested the rest in financial products. Lying on the sofa in my new apartment, I finally felt at ease. Even without lifting a finger, the interest from my bank deposits and investments was enough to sustain me. I indulged in some well-deserved revenge spending, splurging on things I never used to let myself buy. But once the initial rush and satisfaction wore off, I returned to my senses. This was only the beginning. After more than a decade away from the workforce, I knew I had to start by sharpening my mind. Of course, nothing happens overnight. I enrolled in an MBA training program at a prestigious local university, not just for the education but also to rebuild my network and reintegrate into society. In my previous life, though I had been a housewife, I had never stopped following financial news and market trends. That was why I had scoffed at Liu Hao's reckless approach to business. With my knowledge and determination, I quickly built my own network within the class. My life took a dramatic turn for the better. Opportunities for learning and work multiplied. I had thought I wouldn't run into Hansen again, but fate had other plans. At a brand promotion event, I found myself face to face with him. I was there for an assignment my professor had given, while he was merely accompanying his client's executive. Judging by his expression, he had not expected to see me there. But I wasn't surprised at all. After all, the client executive he was trailing, Wayne, was one of my MBA classmates. I had already seen Hansen's name on the attendee list. "Wow, that was fast! Already clinging to another powerful man? Never thought you were that kind of woman, Selena Tang." I finally saw myself through Hansen's eyes. To him, I am just a gold digger. If you can be here, why can't I? I met his gaze, expressionless. My indifference pricked his ego once again. "Looks like I wasn't the only one cheating before the divorce," he scoffed. "Don't get cocky. Be careful, or I'll make you cough up every penny you took from me." I casually told him that. His face darkened. I had no patience to stand there and continue to make snide comments with someone so ignorant. I turned to leave, but Hansen wasn't willing to let go of the chance to humiliate me. "Don't go. Introduce me to your sugar daddy. Maybe I can do business with him in the future." Before I could respond, a voice cut in. "Selena, what are you doing here? We've been waiting for you." Wayne approached me, his tone casual, but his presence made Hansen's face twist with rage. Still, given that Wayne was his client's superior, he didn't dare say anything. He just stood there, glaring at me with contempt. Wayne finally noticed him. "Hansen, what are you doing here? Have you finished preparing your materials?" Unlike his casual tone with me, he looked at Hansen with cold formality. Hansen's eyes flickered downward, a habit of his whenever he lied. "Of course, Vice President Wayne. They're just being printed now. I'll bring them over shortly." Wayne raised an eyebrow but didn't say more. Just as Hansen was about to slink away, Wayne turned to me. "You two know each other?" I met his gaze without hesitation. "He's my ex-husband." A flicker of surprise crossed his face. "Didn't expect that. Your ex-husband, huh? Interesting." Hansen's steps faltered slightly. I smirked. He could never stand the idea of me being better than him. Back then, I had been on the verge of a major promotion until I got accidentally pregnant. That pregnancy had cost me my career. Later, I realized that it hadn't been an accident at all. Hansen had planned it, and I, blinded by love, had forgiven him, even choosing to stay home and raise his child. What a fool I had been. Returning to the private lounge with Wayne, I was greeted warmly by my classmates. They were already deep in discussions about the investment conference. "Hey, class president," someone called out. Yes, I had been elected class president. When I first joined the MBA program, I had been a complete novice, but I was diligent, arriving first in class every day for the first 3 months. My persistence earned the respect of both my professors and my peers. What had started as a simple role, bridging communication between students and faculty, had evolved into something more. Through several hands-on projects, my insights gained recognition, and soon, class president became my identity. Just as I was settling in, Hansen appeared at the doorway, hunched slightly. He claimed he was looking for the Vice President Wayne, but his gaze was locked on me. Wayne beckoned him inside. He placed the documents on the table, but made no move to leave. He wasn't here for business. He just wanted to see how I had managed to infiltrate this upper-class circle. Wayne, unimpressed, dismissed him. "If you have nothing else, you can go now." But he wasn't done. He leaned toward Wayne. "VP, can I have a word with Selena? Just for a moment." His voice was low, but the entire room heard him. All eyes turned to me. I stood up calmly and faced the room. "Everyone, allow me to introduce Hansen Liu, my ex-husband." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the room. He smirked, but his eyes were cold. A classmate chuckled. "Wow, class prez, you really kept that one under wraps." Wayne's gaze lingered on Hansen before he scoffed. "I just found out myself." I walked past Hansen, leading the way out of the lounge. Once outside, he wasted no time sneering. "You'd do anything for money, wouldn't you?" "Is that all you wanted to say?" My voice was calm, but my patience was gone. "Being Wayne's mistress isn't easy. Don't say I didn't warn you," he hissed. I burst into laughter. How ridiculous. Before I could respond further, his phone rang. A woman's voice cooed from the speaker. "Honey, where are you? It's late. Come home soon." He flinched. "You should hurry home," I said loudly, smiling to him as he hung up. His expression twisted in panic. I turned away and re-entered the lounge, leaving him standing there like a fool. Inside, my classmates still buzzed with curiosity. Was that really your ex-husband? The same guy who was groveling in front of Wayne just now? Wow, Selena, with your skills and looks, you don't need to rely on any man. Several female classmates who are management executives chimed in, speaking up for me. I laughed along with them. I had been reborn. I knew now that even my own flesh and blood couldn't be relied on, let alone men. And just as I was preparing to start my first business, Jen came looking for me. She had grown taller but thinner, her smile wide as she saw me. "Mommy, I missed you so much. Why don't you ever come see me?" But her eyes weren't on me. They were glued to my designer handbag. In my past life, I had never owned a single luxury item, not even decent clothes. Seeing my silence, Jen's eyes welled up with tears. "Mommy, please, take me with you. I don't want to live with Daddy anymore." Her words struck me. She sounded so pitiful. I remembered how, in my past life, she had begged her father just like this too. Taking her to a restaurant, I let her order whatever she wanted. Just as before, she only picked the most expensive dishes. When the table was covered in food, she hesitated. "Mommy, I ordered too much, didn't I? Do you have enough money?" She wanted me to reassure her, to say, "Don't worry, Mommy will take care of it." But I didn't give her that satisfaction. "Don't worry," I said with a smile. "I already texted your father. He'll be coming to pay the bill." Jen's face paled in fear. "No, Dad mustn't know. He mustn't find out." Seeing her reaction, I instantly knew. She must have already tasted her father's wrath. She wanted to leave, but I stopped her. "Didn't you just say you were hungry? Eat, don't worry. Your dad won't be angry." As soon as I finished speaking, she slowly sat back down, her eyes darting around, clearly scheming something. After a pause, she began recounting her experiences from the past few months. Ever since custody had been awarded to Hansen and Celia, life had been anything but kind to her. Whenever Celia had an argument with Hansen and feeling annoyed, she would sneer, "You're so sure Selena gave up everything just to keep you? Well, look at her now. Not only is she penniless, but she also has to raise a burden like you." Pregnant and full of resentment, Celia Chu had assumed superiority as her guardian. Forcing Jen to serve her every whim, the slightest dissatisfaction would lead to scolding, sometimes even physical punishment. As she spoke, a few well-timed tears trickled down her cheeks. "Mom, I know you love me the most. You wouldn't want me to suffer, right? You must be making a lot of money now, aren't you?" She was baiting me. "Money? I have none. If you live with me, you'll suffer. I don't even have a place for you to sleep. My apartment isn't as big as your dad's living room." I wasn't lying. My apartment was small, but more importantly, it couldn't accommodate the greed in Jen's heart. Just as we were speaking, Hansen and Celia arrived together. The moment Jen saw them, she burst into loud, dramatic sobs, drawing the attention of the entire restaurant. "If you feel so wronged living with us, then go live with your mother," Celia Chu sneered. "Let's see if she even wants you." "Selena, you can see it for yourself. Jen wants to be with you." Hansen sighed as if he were burdened by the situation. "Celia is about to give birth. I really don't have the energy to take care of 2 kids. I smiled coldly. "Fine, I'll take her if you would transfer $1,000 in child support to me every month, not a cent less," I demanded. At my words, Celia's face twisted in rage. "Why should we give you money? Selena, you're so greedy. You're the worst kind of mother, giving up your own daughter for money." Her shrill accusations caught the attention of the restaurant manager, who, as luck would have it, had met me before. "Miss Tang? Oh my, why didn't you tell me you were coming?" I had worked with his company on business events before. He recognized me immediately. "Sorry, just a bit of family drama ruining your business." "Oh, it's no problem at all. Please, this way. I'll take you to a private room upstairs." And just like that, under Hansen and Celia's stunned gazes, I was escorted politely away by the manager. It wasn't just a slap to Hansen's pride. It also crushed Celia's arrogance. Well, I heard you became someone's mistress," she smirked. "Guess you'll do anything for money." Before she could finish, my palm met her face with a loud smack. I had wanted to do this for a long time. "Just because you're a homewrecker doesn't mean everyone else is." She clutched her cheek in shock. "Hansen, I'm pregnant, and she hit me. Are you just going to stand there?" Hansen, enraged, grabbed my wrist, ready to strike. I smiled coldly. "If you dare lay a finger on me, I'll make sure you lose your job by tomorrow." His hand hovered in midair, hesitation flashing in his eyes. "Hansen, are you even a man?" Celia shrieked. "Shut up." For once, a shred of logic prevailed in his brain. Ever since the last time he saw my growing network, he had been digging into my connections. He knew I wasn't so easily bullied as before. Furious, she stormed out. "Fine. Stay with your ex-wife then. I'll take my son and die somewhere far away." Hansen shot me a venomous glare before running after her. Jen, who had been watching everything unfold, stood frozen in shock. I knew she had memories of our past life, but this time, I have the power to rewrite everything. Your dad and stepmother are gone. You should go home too. Mom, please let me live with you. I was wrong before. I'm sorry. I can't afford to raise you. If I hadn't lived through my past life, I might have held her and promised her the world. But now I knew, even if I gave her everything, I could never change her. She was her father's daughter, selfish to the core. Seeing that she wouldn't leave, I hailed a taxi and sent her back myself. She sulked the whole way. So annoying. This time I swore I would erase anything that irritated me from my life. But no matter how much I tried to avoid them, news about that family always found its way to me. One day, a classmate from my MBA program, a finance specialist, approached me with a warning. Selena, don't lend your ex-husband any money. I heard that he's drowning in debt. If he doesn't pay up soon, he'll be blacklisted as a fraud. I wasn't surprised. After our divorce, I knew Hansen had little money left. Yet he continued his high-spending lifestyle for the sake of appearances. His startup wasn't doing well, and though Wayne had initially given him some small projects out of respect for me, Hansen's arrogance had ruined those opportunities. With a failing business, no steady income, and a gold-digger wife, there was only one place he could try to squeeze money from: me. Sure enough, Jen showed up at my apartment complex one night, standing at the security gates with a backpack, waiting for me until midnight. The security guard, feeling sorry for her, let her into the small guardhouse. As soon as I parked my car, she ran up to me. Mom, please don't send me away. Exhausted from the day's work, I didn't want to reason with her. I reluctantly let her in. She pulled up her sleeve, revealing bruises. Mom, please let me stay. My stepmom hit me. Look at this. She did this to me. As I cleaned up, trying to make space for her to sleep for the night, I listened to her endless complaints. Then she said something that sent a chill down my spine. Mom, can you take me to the beach this weekend? I froze. Memories of my past life crashed into me like a tidal wave. She had said the exact same thing before. That time, it was a trap. She and her dad had staged an accident. I died on my way to pick her up from school. I had watched as a wandering spirit the undisguised joy on their faces when they heard of my death. My heart clenched, my breath hitched. That suffocating terror returned, making my scalp prickle. Mom, what's wrong? She took my hand gently. You'll take me, won't you? This weekend, okay? She asked again and again. I had been reborn, but even in this new life, can I not escape my fate? The next day after dropping Jiajia off at school, I did something I had never done before. I called Hansen first. It was as if he had been expecting my call. Jen have been bugging me since last night to take a trip to the seaside together. What do you think? I asked cautiously, testing the waters. That's great. She's been talking about it for a while now. Besides, her birthday is coming up. It will be a good celebration for her. You're her mother? Just do this for her. Let's go this weekend. I'll drive. His voice was filled with fake enthusiasm, but I could hear the underlying calculation. Perfect. The trap was set. Early Saturday morning, I arrived at Hansen's apartment and waited downstairs. My unexpected visit clearly threw him off. The moment he got in the car, I noticed his discomfort. After all, in our past life, when the accident happened, I had been alone in the car. Why are we here? Aren't we supposed to pick up Jen first? He questioned from the back seat. The earlier we go, the earlier we return. You have a pregnant wife at home, don't you? I wouldn't want to delay you too long. I glanced at him through the rearview mirror. He had his head down, furiously typing on his phone, probably trying to adjust whatever sinister plan he had. The car sped onto the highway. Where are you going? Why are we on the expressway? I took a wrong turn. I haven't driven much lately. Guess I'm a little rusty, I said, pretending to be flustered. He was growing agitated. Pull over. I'll drive, he shouted, reaching for his seatbelt. But I acted as though I hadn't heard him. My foot pressed harder on the gas. The moment his hands fumbled for the buckle, and bam, impact. A truck slammed into the side where he was sitting. The force sent the car spinning out of control, dragging across the highway. He hadn't fastened his seatbelt. The violent inertia sent his body flying out of the shattered window. By the time the ambulance arrived, I had already crawled out of the wreckage with only minor bruises. Hansen, on the other hand, lay unconscious, his body shattered. On the way to the hospital, I made a call to Jen and to Celia. Their reactions were exactly what I expected: shock, fear, disbelief. When they arrived at the hospital, Jen's eyes were wide with horror as she looked at me, as if she had seen a ghost. Celia's pregnant belly and all lost all composure, lunging at me in a fury. "Careful now," I smirked, stepping back. "That's still your baby, isn't it? Though I suppose that's debatable." "You're lying," she shrieked. "You killed Hansen. Hansen is still alive. He's in surgery, so what are you screaming for?" I said, my tone ice cold. The truth was, she knew about the planned accident all along. She just never expected the outcome to backfire so spectacularly. Hansen survived, but just barely. When he was transferred out of the ICU, the doctors confirmed it. He was in a vegetative state. His once dominant, arrogant self was now nothing more than a lifeless body on a hospital bed. And the moment that news got out, his creditors came knocking. Legally, his debts were now Celia's problem. She panicked, stripped his apartment bare, sold off whatever little assets he had left, and fled in the middle of the night. She left nothing behind, not even for Jen. Jen was thrown out of their rental apartment by the landlord. Homeless, she had nowhere to go. That's when the drama truly began. While I was at work, my phone rang. It was the security from my building. "Miss Selena, could you return home as soon as possible? There's a crowd gathered outside your residence. Some people are even holding banners, and it's disturbing the neighbors." A moment later, I received a picture. Jen, standing in front of the building, holding a large sign that read, "Heartless mother abandons disabled ex-husband and daughter on the streets." Journalists surrounded her, cameras flashing, live streams running. In a matter of hours, the internet exploded. I became public enemy number one. Jen, with tear-streaked cheeks, pleaded in front of the cameras. "My mom is rich. Ever since my dad's accident, I haven't been able to reach her. I have no money to take care of him. Please help us." The world ate it up. The hate flooded in. People stormed my workplace, threw rocks at my windows, and harassed my friends. I became the villain of the century, but they didn't know the full story. Back in my residence, I handed a USB drive to my ally, Wayne. Inside, a life insurance policy worth an absurd amount bought for me by Hansen just 3 months ago. Records of his debts, and the crown jewel, a recording of both Jen and Hansen plotting my death. See, Jen had always coveted my wealth. She thought that by getting rid of me, she'd earn her father's favor. She even helped speed up the plan, and I had evidence of it all. Wayne's eyes widened. "Unbelievable. She's just a child." I let out a cold laugh. "A child?" After our careful planning, I went live. I unveiled everything. The infidelity, the debts, the insurance scam, the planned murder. The internet flipped overnight. Jen, once the tragic victim, became the most despised person on the web. But by then, she was already gone. With the donation money she scammed, she vanished. But the internet never forgets. We found her, hiding in a tiny rundown apartment. When the cameras turned to her, she dropped to her knees, begging me for forgiveness. But there was none left in me to give. As for Hansen, he was dumped into a second-rate nursing home. I was careful to only pay for 1 month. After that, without receiving any more payment, the institution sent him to a public elderly care facility. Months later, I received a call from the facility. "Miss Tang, we would like to inform you that Mr. Hansen passed away in his sleep due to suffocation." But I never went to claim his body. After his cremation, I told the worker to just scatter his ashes into the river. As for Jen, the public humiliation crushed her. Since then, she was living in constant fear and isolation. She fell into a deep depression after that. Shortly, she was admitted to a psychiatric hospital. And just across the street, it was the graveyard of her father. This is where the story ends. Thank you all for listening.